Hi, guys. This is Robin, your host for the day. I hope you and your family are keeping well and staying safe. Welcome again to yet another event by Designhill. And today we will be discussing Agile communication for business success. Today's event is brought to you by Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace that caters to the creative needs of businesses and individuals alike, who can source high quality designs from professional designers and buy unique products created by independent artists. So, moving ahead, let me introduce our speaker for today. We have with us Dante Healy. Dante Healy is a former senior finance manager plus certified project manager and scrum master. He is an agile finance transformation specialist with a successful background in developing and implementing end-to-end financial and business change strategies, delivering agile capability to drive business growth. As a certified project leader, Dant led a finance transformation program introducing a common automated finance system which delivered seven figure annual savings for the regional finance function by effectively leading cross functional and dispersed project teams across finance, IT, and operations. As a lifelong learner, Dant has multiple skills covering finance, project management, coding, and software development, and neuro linguistics programming. So, guys, before we start the session, here is the big announcement. We are giving away certificates to the attendees who will stick till the end of the session. You just can't miss this chance, so stay tuned till the very end. Also, you can take a screenshot of this event, put on your Twitter, use hashtag DesignHill Events, tag DesignHillDH, and the Twitter handles will be in the chat box in a minute. Having said that, let's quickly look at what Design Hill is all about.
Need to get your parents off your back? Head to the world's #1 creative marketplace, Designhill.
When I started my photography business, I needed something that said this was more than just a hobby. It's not a hobby, Mom. That's why I went to Designhill and got an amazing logo super fast at a price I could afford. The process was easy using Designhill's logo maker. Just enter the name of your business, then pick out a number of designs that inspire you. I'll pick this one and that one looks cute. Then pick your colors or let the system decide. Add some more info like a slogan, the industry your business is in, and your budget. The logo maker, using machine learning and artificial intelligence, will design thousands of logo variants that you can choose from and adapt. In fact, I was able to get everything from business cards to t-shirt design and complete social media kit, all with the click of a button. With that, I'm all set. Now everyone I meet knows I'm a legit photographer. Even my mom. It's real. It's real. That's decaf.
Let the world know it's real and build your brand with Designhill. Build your brand with Designhill.
All right, that was all about Design Hill, and now we are all set to start the session. Guys, if you have anything that you would like to ask Dant, do put it under questions tab. We have rolled out a few polls in the poll section. Don't forget to answer them. So, Dant, let's begin with the session. Over to you. You can start sharing your screen now.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, let me get my screen up. So, whoops. That looks a bit, maybe I'll just disconnect.
Yeah,
Give me
Dan,
one.
can you please share it again? Let me let me cancel this stream now.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Just bear with me a
Can you
second.
please? Sure.
I'm going to compensate. So, give me another second. I'm just going to restart that second screen.
Perfect.
Okay. How is that?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right, starting the slideshow now. So everyone, thank you very much for attending this webinar. In this presentation, I'll be going through some key concepts on agile communication for business success. So to cover some of the agenda, I will be giving an overview of the goals of the presentation, communication in an agile context, why and what of agile communication. So starting with a bit of agile and then going into the communication element of agile, and then concepts of agile communication. And then we go into some of the meat in terms of overcoming barriers to effective communication. So laying out the business case with the cost of poor communication, then barriers to effective communication, avoiding miscommunication, and then we'll pause. And then I'll go into the more skills-based elements, which include effective business communication, leadership communication, and then key communication skills. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So, presentation goals. Why are good communication skills essential to help businesses become more agile, and what type of skills are essential? So agile is about the mindset, which is associated with risk management. And that is because as businesses find that they have to rapidly change, this requires effective communication in order to make that change work. There is also a clear business case for investing in your communication skills in your organization, which we'll cover later in the presentation. And to hammer home the point that effective communication enables collaboration. For a business to be successful, there's many different parts that need to be working correctly at the same time. And the communication elements of that include culture, leadership, mindsets, and people. And it's not only about the systems and processes. I do caveat as well in this presentation, this is not about persuasion, negotiation, or public speaking, although I do say that perhaps your persuasion skills, negotiation skills, and public speaking skills will improve as an indirect consequence of this presentation. So, talking about the business side of Agile, customer value starts with relationships. And to quote Peter Drucker, the single purpose of business is to get a customer, is to serve the customer. And how do you serve customers? Well, you serve customers by delivering solutions to their problems. And what essentially drives a customer is either alleviating pain or delivering pleasure. So how you deliver those services and how you successfully serve the customer is the key in order to have a successful business. So why is it about agile communication? So this slide highlights that a business will face various internal and external drivers that will force change upon the business. And that change creates greater risk and uncertainty for your team members. It also creates opportunity for fast movers. So companies that are well positioned for change can exploit any opportunities in the market far faster than their competitors. However, for those organizations that struggle with change, it creates additional stress and demands on people. And in order to successfully achieve the right outcomes, you need to have your network of people working together. And that communication enables effective collaboration. So, coming to the overview of Agile as a delivery and change methodology, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. That is the first value of the Agile Manifesto, which has 4 values, talking about how people work together, how they interact. And this is key in when you start to work on change in your business. So the original change delivery model was waterfall. And as you can see, the way it's structured is sequential in separate phases, and each one must be completed before the subsequent phase can start. And normally what happens is those phases are delivered by different teams. And so as they hand over work, there is that interaction where you impart knowledge. So in waterfall, you have a very formalized process, and there is a structure around controlling that communication and also fixing the target with which you're aiming for. This process worked very well up until the 2000s, when more innovative companies were finding different ways to deliver working software. And so what we have is an agile method. And this example is from Scrum, which is what the most popular agile delivery. And what you can see here is essentially those 5 phases are compressed into smaller phases. And instead of delivering everything at the end, you deliver small chunks of value to the customer. And then you reflect on that value delivered after the initial sprint, and then rework your plan, and then figure out what the next sprint will deliver. And you iterate your target. What this does is essentially enables more flexibility in your plan, because you can change. So in terms of the little stars, you can see that within an agile project, you have a higher frequency of interactions. Those interactions will be less formalized and of lower duration, in order to facilitate the flexibility needed in order to have the project pivot when required. So with waterfall, you assume the requirements are clear and understood up front. With agile, you're working in an environment where the requirements continuously change, which could be in a volatile business landscape, or also a highly complex organization. And that flexibility is what makes the project delivery system work. But it requires very good communication skills. So if we look at how agile works in a traditional structure, so what happens is you start with functional teams, and they tend to work in the silos, and therefore the change has to be led, and it's led traditionally by a project manager, whose role is essentially 70 to 90% communication. And that communication ensures that people know what they need to do by when. And the project manager in this role will take full ownership for the success of the change that's being delivered. As the organization transitions away from projects into a more agile transformation structure, agile teams are formed through cross-functional teams. So representatives from each function will work together, and they'll work on an individual product or a service that is delivered to a customer. They tend to be more focused and flexible, and therefore the constraints are managed because the team will collectively group together, and they will help each other and share information. The leadership model for this type of project is a Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master takes the role of a servant leader. Essentially, what they do is they ensure that the team, who are independent and autonomous and collectively responsible for the success of their project, the Scrum Master will ensure that they follow the agreed delivery process. So whatever rules are established within the team are those rules that are enforced by the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master also acts to enable the team through coaching, finding out what's wrong, and problem solving, to make sure that they're in the right environment. And they also shield the team from any external interruptions. So in essence, what happens is you find that the Scrum Master has an enabling role. And whilst it sounds like it's not so involved as maybe a project manager, it's actually a very challenging role to do, because it requires a selfless version of leadership. So in terms of concepts of agile communication, what you'll find is that you will get regular meetings. They'll be focused and they'll be more frequent, and you only focus on what will move the project forward. So focusing clearly on the work, focusing on the risks, and ideally having face-to-face interactions, which in this modern day is more challenging because people aren't necessarily working in the offices as much. So you have cross-functional teams as well, being able to share what are the challenges, what are the constraints from their perspective, in order to avoid misalignment and understand if there are any risks to successful delivery. Again, with agile communication, you do not work in a bubble or in isolation with the customer. It tends to be collaborative. Customers are able to provide feedback. And for example, in startup companies, you find that customers will send ideas or identify, if it's a software company, for example, what is missing. And that feedback is collected and then managed by the product owner, who becomes the customer representative in the project. They take ownership of what to prioritize and what to deliver by when. In Agile as well, in the organization, it's really important that communication is transparent. So in the way of working, you have minimal documentation. However, the work is made visible and available for inspection. So for example, a software developer would allow their code to be viewed by the senior technical lead and be able to review it and evaluate if there are any bugs or if there's any poor quality in the code. However, this requires courage and psychological safety. People will be less inclined to share any mistakes if they feel threatened in their career. So it's important that any errors and any perceived weaknesses are not punished. This also addresses the fact that peer pressure may cause people to withhold vital information if failure isn't tolerated. So in an agile organization, it's important that people, if they're starting something new, they're allowed to fail and they're allowed to learn and grow from the experience. So these key enablers need to be in place in order to be truly agile when communicating and sharing information. So coming up to the barriers of effective communication. When does communication break down, and when do conversations deviate from the truth? So if people are not candid about expressing their views, you'll find that you create misinformation, missing information that prevents effective decision making and overlooks maybe some issues that are arising in your transformation. So in 2019, a project management company did a survey of 471 respondents. In addition, there have been studies and estimates that have been performed across companies of all sizes. And what they found was, in terms of communication, of those 471 respondents surveyed, 74% switched customers if they found the communications within a business, or switched suppliers if they found if communications within the business were deemed ineffective. They also found that 92% of those surveyed experience having to repeat messages to colleagues more than multiple times. So essentially creating delays, inefficiency in their internal operation because of misunderstood communications. And also working with business partners like vendors and consultants, they found that those supposed experts lost credibility if they had to communicate more than once to them, and if they didn't manage the information flow or they didn't understand what was being discussed. So clearly it's important to have communication, not just because your business needs to move forward, but also you risk losing customers and increasing the costs of your operation. And in fact, over 10 years ago, in a study by the Voice of PR, it estimated that poor communication costed companies $37 billion per year. And I think, having moved on another decade, I suspect if the survey was to be reperformed, that estimate would actually go up. So this is the transmission model of communication, and it's a way to illustrate how your messages are diluted. So as you come from the sender to the recipient, the message, it can have multiple forms. It can be an email, it can be a phone call, It can be a face-to-face interaction and conversation. And as the message passes from the sender to the receiver, you'll find that the message gets diluted and then it becomes faint due to noise. And that noise can be classified into two elements. For example, there's semantic noise, which comes from things like accents, expressions, colloquialisms, terms. And for example, if someone said to a colleague, "You look hot today," does that mean they're saying you're struggling with the temperature, or that they find you very attractive? So it may be misunderstood expressions. And then environmental noise, which can happen on a webinar. So for example, if you're talking and the signal is not strong, or there's disruption, signal interference in the background, you may find you miss key sentences and words in the background that completely dilute or change the context of the communication. And also, I found in global organizations, one of the biggest challenges when talking to different people in different parts of the world, even though English tends to be a common language. I've worked for global American companies. You find that the cultural aspects are the biggest challenge in order to ensure common understanding. So, for example, words, expressions become very challenging if English isn't your first language, and even if English is your first language, but the cultures are different. So different people from different parts of the world have challenges expressing different ways of communicating. So, for example, having high context cultures versus more direct cultures where they want the information that's only relevant, whereas context cultures may imply things through codified language. And also challenging things like accents, which may cause words themselves to be misunderstood. So the challenge here, as you can see, is getting the message fully understood between the sender and the receiver. And one of the ways to manage that challenge is to, if you're unsure, question to seek clarification. Because again, maybe jargon, maybe acronyms, maybe terms that are internal to the business or the person's culture or the person's own background may create confusion. And if there is confusion or uncertainty, it's best to clarify. So when you go in organizations, this tree swing diagram is a very good illustration and very popular one in terms of how important it is to have a common understanding across the business. With different perspectives in each department, there is the risk that the messages can be misinterpreted differently. So you see what marketing suggested, what management approved as designed by engineering, what was manufactured as maintenance installed it on a swing, and then the customer actually wanted something that was actually quite simple in the end. So it emphasizes that without a common understanding of the goal across the organization, what you could end up with is either people doing the right things in the wrong way, people doing the wrong things in the right way, or at its worst, people doing the wrong things in the wrong way. So if you're not careful in a worst case scenario, that communication could lead to total chaos if it's not managed correctly. So how do we address that? We'll cover this after the break. Okay.
Great. So, guys, I'm sure everyone is enjoying this insightful session by Dante. And stay tuned. We will be back for questions in a while. Let's take a quick break.
Clarematics is a full-service video agency based around video production. We created a brand that fit our identity at the time, but as we've evolved as a company, we found that original brand didn't quite fit our aspirations anymore. Finding a partner to rebrand your entire company takes a lot of time and effort. Finding Designhill was an incredible lifeline. Designhill offers a money-back guarantee. If we don't like any of the designs, we get all of our money back. The stuff that we ended up with were well beyond what we had been seeing on other creative services platforms. After creating a simple design brief by answering some questions created by Designhill, we posted, and within a few days, we had over 250 entries. Designhill's platform made it easy to communicate with all of the potential designers. Eventually, we picked a winner. In addition to a logo, our designer also created a letterhead, business cards, and banners for all of our social media platforms. With Designhill's help, we now have a brand that meets our aspirations. We're ready for the future and everything that it's here to bring.
So, all right, we are back again with our amazing guest, Dante. Over to you, Dante.
Thank you, Robin. So, can you see my screen? Let me keep going. Okay, thank you very much. So now we get into the meat of the presentation, which is about the skills in Agile communication. So there's two elements to effective communication in a business context. One is the actual professionalism, and then the other one is the leadership to make change happen. In meetings of teams, there's always a cost associated with it. And when I talk about customer value, I think about business acumen. And then business acumen is essentially understanding how you serve the customer best, how you deliver that value to them. And also, when you think about that, also ensure that there is a valid business case as to why something should be done. So if you think about it in project management, before a project can be started, you need to justify that the benefits delivered in the project actually outweigh the costs associated with the project. So if something's worth doing, it's worth doing well, but you need to make sure that it's worth doing before you invest that time and effort into it first. And as an example from a friend of mine, they had a junior analyst who was working in a department, and that analyst had to work off-site. As part of their expenses claim, they were able to claim for travel, and because this off-site location didn't have a canteen, they were also to claim for a meal. This person ordered a modest meal. It was about £5. And when they came back, the manager decided, actually, you were going to eat anyway. I don't think you should claim for the meal. So can you remove it from the expense claim? The analyst actually stood their ground and said, it's within policy. I incurred this expense on company business. I'm going to claim the meal. So the manager tried to convince this employee over multiple meetings to actually withdraw that small expense claim for the meal and just claim for the travel. Fortunately, the analyst stood their ground, and because the manager couldn't convince them, that manager then escalated up to their senior manager. I was hoping to hear that the senior manager had told them, don't be silly, let them claim the expense. But no, the senior manager also tried to schedule one last meeting with all three of them to convince this analyst to withdraw the expense claim. The analyst again stood their ground and didn't claim, and managed to get them to approve the claim for the meal expense. However, it comes across as very silly and petty, but when I actually did the numbers, I found out that if you multiply that person's, all the people who were involved in meetings and their time times the number of hours involved discussing this petty thing, it costed the business 50 times the actual expenditure of the meal that was claimed. So I know it's an extreme example, but I hope it emphasizes the point of thinking about value. If I was to price the cost of the meetings in terms of time, it would have been a different discussion, and I think the expense claim would have been approved much more quickly. So when you think about communication, don't just communicate facts and figures. Talk about the goals and results. Another quality in professional communication is being efficient and effective. So you need to be able to be articulate, be direct. Do not talk about non-essential topics when necessary, and get straight to the real issues. When you're communicating, waffle implies lack of knowledge or lack of confidence, which is again lack of knowledge because you're not confident in what you're saying. So keep things simple. Don't be vague or ambiguous. Avoid complex words. Avoid acronyms or jargon that disconnect you from your audience. So to communicate in a professional manner, be factual, clear, to the point. Also, uncover the unknowns through questioning. So the other part of professional communication is your credibility. So you have to show up and be confident. So when you attend meetings, plan for them, be punctual, and turn up for meetings, because that communicates your commitment and your credibility. Also, when you are assigned tasks, agree them and be disciplined, making sure you follow up. Prepare. Before you go to a meeting, ideally understand the purpose and therefore understand your contribution expected for that meeting and gather the necessary data and information. And during the meeting, even if it tends to be, like, for example, a high stakes discussion and highly charged and emotional, avoid being aggressive or overly emotional for two reasons. You need to have control, and also for the people you're working with, they need to feel psychologically safe. And people need to be able to do that to perform at their best. It doesn't always have to be agreement, but it has to be professional. So how you conduct yourself as a professional, credibility and transparency fosters trust in your business communication. Coming up to leadership communication. So the idea of a leader I'm referring to is not about position or authority, but it's about how you connect and inspire others to do the right thing for the business. And you do that by being a role model and reinforcing the right behaviors. Things can go wrong at certain times, and it's when issues arise that true leaders show their worth and set the right examples for others to follow. So having the right character involves integrity and authenticity. Your behaviors must align with your values, your principles, and your words. You need to be highly self-aware, not only of your own motivations, but also your own strengths and weaknesses, what you can do, what you can't do. And because everyone is different, and a team is built of people ideally with different skills that can support each other. Also, be careful in your communication. The right type of leader will inspire trust, and people will go to you with information. And if it's personal in nature, the ideal behavior to have is true leaders don't gossip or betray confidence. So if someone shares something with you in confidence, you don't talk about it to other people. So when you lead, the other character is initiative. When you lead, you're leading from the front. And that's what a leader is. If you want people to follow, you need to go first. You need to take that initiative. You need to take the risks. Don't avoid difficult conversations. If you see people falling below standards, you need to be able to correct them. In conflict situations or tough decisions, you need to be brave, and you need to be able to challenge things that don't sit with your beliefs and your beliefs and your motivations. Don't tolerate poor behavioral performance, and don't accept poor performance in others. So the final element of influencing of leadership is motivation. So how do you influence and inspire others to action? And inspiring others is being able to not just envision, but communicate a better vision of the future, both for your team members and for the business, being able to envision success and the benefits it brings to your team, being able to project confidence and overcome setbacks, and showing repeated success despite challenges will also inspire teams who will want to follow someone who is able to succeed. People aren't afraid of trying, they're afraid of failure. So if you can inspire them, if you can tell them failure isn't failure, if it's feedback, and you keep trying, then they will continue to follow you and they will continue to perform at their best. And also, getting the best out of the teams, engaging them all to succeed is about being inclusive. It's not about having people in the team who you focus on solely, but also getting people who might be more quiet and encouraging them to participate. In some of my teams, it's been the most silent people who actually have the most value to share, because they're listening and they're not only talking. So to summarize how leadership should work in a very simple statement, just say what you mean what you say, and don't be mean when you say it. So to finally wrap up with the communication skills, here are some key skills that I use when I'm managing my projects and interactions with people. When you have meetings or any interaction, be deliberate and intentional about the outcomes you seek. Have a goal and focus on what are the key enablers to help you reach that goal. People and relationships are about forming strong networks within your organization. And with those networks, you can influence and drive really great results. If you're unsure, ask questions to seek conversations. Questioning is also a great tool to drive conversations forward. You can use it to validate what's known, what's unknown, and also, if you're stuck, what does it take in order to succeed? Employ active listening and observation. A friend of mine said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So again, try to listen more than you talk and be open and flexible to that new information. Aim for clarity when you talk as well. You need to be understood by your audience. So keep your presentation, your words simple, use direct language, avoid jargon. So-called experts use buzzwords, and sometimes I suspect half the time, or more than half the time, they don't know what they're talking about. Also, adopt transparency and openness. Being open about where you are, what you're thinking, will help to build trust, because if you trust people, they will in turn be more likely to reciprocate. Also, as I said before, be inclusive. Get everyone to engage and contribute. Inclusivity is key for engagement, and engagement is key to your business. According to Gallup, the average cost of employee disengagement is 34% of an employee's salary. And then for yourself, when you're faced in a high stakes situation, check in with yourself, because the worst time to make decisions is when you're forced or under pressure. You tend to make the wrong decisions. So where possible, unless you have a gun to your head, ask your counterparty, can I be allowed more time to think about it? And come back to them as soon as you can. So I hope this helps. And just to wrap up with my message, for businesses to be agile, the communication needs to be clear, precise, and efficient for business success. Thank you very much. My name is Dante Healy. I'm an Agile project manager, Scrum Master, coder, and former finance manager. I'm delivery method agnostic, so I tend to blend different methodologies and take the best of all of them and customize it to the organization and transformation I'm leading at the time. I also am addicted to streamlining and process automation. I'm looking now to launch a training business, leveraging my real world experience as well as my training. I don't do individual coaching, but if you want, I can refer you to some great people. And if you just want to talk, I'm quite approachable, so feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. And I guess I'll leave it for questions. Thank you.
Great, Dante. So, Dante, I must say that was an amazing presentation. And guys, I hope everyone learned from this insightful session from Dante. So now, Dante, let's come to the questions. Uh, we don't have any questions in the questions tab, but we do have a question in the chat section. It's from Yavan Jan Muhammad. He's asking if I, as a leader, see my personal miscommunicate toward a client, how do I do in that moment? Should I correct this behavior or make sure the client is well informed and personal is educated instead of corrected?
That's a great question. And in terms of how I would react if it was my person, it would depend on the context and the information at hand. If the miscommunication is something that could be detrimental to the business, then I would definitely address it there and then. And I take a process approach, which would be to understand why that person miscommunicated. Was it poor training? Was it a misunderstanding? And again, coming back to it, were they miscommunicated to? But for certain, I would actually be transparent with the customer and make sure that they understood and were corrected in their understanding sooner rather than later. If it's a minor thing, it depends how minor, but if it's not going to risk the relationship with the customer, I might let it slide and communicate to the employee later. Either way, I would ensure they get coached and understand why the miscommunication happened.
Great, amazing. So thank you so much, Dante, for answering that. So we have another question. It's from Ronald. Uh, he's asking, what do you recommend to leaders in ways of training their employees in communication?
Okay. Yeah, communication is a very niche skill. So I think in terms of communication, I've used change management references and also my experience. I think a lot of it is also framed around the culture. So having a more open culture, it depends where you're coming from. If communications are driven by internal politics or conflict, then that's going to be obviously more challenging. If it's about being able to communicate in a more professional context, then there are lots of great coaches and trainers that I could advise. So if you have a specific need, we can talk. I'm happy to also, if I can't deliver it, I'm happy to recommend some great people I know in my network.
Wonderful. So I hope, Ronald, this answers your query. And I would recommend that you can also connect with Dante on LinkedIn. The link we have shared in the chat section. So you can connect with him after this event, and he will be happy to help you with all your queries. Then we have the next question, Dante, from Mark. He wants to know how about culture, especially in high context culture, where the concept of face is very essential. Is it okay to be direct?
And again, coming to culture, you have to understand the rules of the culture. So in high context cultures, being very direct depends. I think if it's someone senior or junior, a high context culture that I guess it's trying to be respectful. So if it's something that may make them look foolish and it's in front of a public audience, I would say keep it for a private conversation, provided it's not mission critical and it's not something that needs to be said in the moment, if that makes sense. I always try to create conversations and trust and make people comfortable so that they're not threatened. I think some of the challenges with communication is also in large organizations, there tends to be a lot of internal competition. And when you're competing with people you should be working with, that becomes a challenge. So try to help the person, because I think you may find that in some interactions, you may lose out because you find you're ending up with more work or more responsibility, or they get more of the credit for the work you've done. But think about the war, as it were, and the long-term fostering of the relationship, because building that relationship and creating that network within an organization is critical, because it helps you to get things done over time.
Okay, okay. We have another question from Mark. He's asking about non-verbal communication, and he wants to know how significant is this to be agile.
I think non-verbal communication comes in a number of forms. One is the energy you bring to a group and dynamic. So if you can show passion, people get addicted to it. And if you're leading them with passion, I'm trying to explain it by raising my voice and talking excitedly. So that becomes infectious, right? So it's what you want to do with that body language. You can also use body language to read other people if they come across as being a bit sad, a bit lonely, a bit deflated. You may need to pick them up or at least empathize with them to get them to open up. It could be because they're stressed out about what they're doing. Maybe they've overcommitted, and you need to get that out of them to see if you can help them, especially if it could cause issues in your transformation or your initiatives that you're trying to drive forward. Does that help?
I hope, Mark, this answers your question. Okay, so we have a question coming up from Noah. He's asking how to nail a perfect communication plan in order to make your business successful. Please suggest some successful tips.
Communication plans are great. I find I'm going to go back to Project Management 101, and it's about having a stakeholder map. So understanding who your stakeholders are and then clarifying what is their influence and what is their interest. So you prioritize essentially who your stakeholders are, and the ones with the most power and influence and also interest in the project. You need to make sure that they're committed. So you need to get that driving, you need to drive those conversations forward. I guess understanding the specific context of your business, it's who are you looking to influence in your organization and what outcomes are you trying to seek? And then from that, who are the people who are most likely to help you in that communication, in that initiative that you're driving forward? And then you plan those communications. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely, Dante. So also, Noah, I would suggest that you can also go through to this webinar on our YouTube channel, where Dante has suggested some very insightful tips about business communication plans. So we have a question coming up from George. He's asking, how do I manage situation where a change of managers has led to a change of communication, where I am not asked my opinion but asked to respond to decisions made by others?
That's a tricky one. That's a great question. And yeah, I think it's always a challenge, and perhaps I didn't emphasize that on the internal change factors, because as people change, they bring their own ways of working and their own style of relating to others. So this sounds like something which you will need to, if it's your manager who's doing this, you will need to try and effectively manage up. So I would start with that manager, focus on having a dialogue with them if you don't already, and bring this up. If you feel like you can trust them and you can share that information, because obviously there's the power dynamic. But I think it always helps to have that discussion to see how you can move forward and explain to them, ideally, how you like to work and how you like to be involved in key discussions, because obviously you want to influence it and also you want to help. So if you can try and sell it as well in a way that will benefit them, because people generally, when they look at something, they want to think, well, what's in it for me? What's my motivation to change my behavior? Because changing habits and behaviors is one of the trickiest things in transformation.
Wonderful. So I think we are good with questions. We don't have any more questions now. So, all right, guys, this brings us to the end of this wonderful workshop with Dante. This was indeed a value packed session, although there is a lot more that we could have learned. Unfortunately, we are limited by time here, and I hope you guys loved this session because I personally did. So, once again, I would like to thank you, Dante, for taking out time to be a part of this event.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right, guys, this is not where it ends. We have a lot more events lined up for you in the coming days. So if you guys are interested and haven't registered yet, Harshita from our team is sharing the link of our events page, upcoming events, and you can register there. You can subscribe to the events page and stay updated of all of our upcoming events. Also, do check out our Learn page to feed your inspiration and creativity. Multiply your business and creative growth 10 times by learning tips, hacks, growth stories, expert advice from the industry's best. Visit Design Hill Learn page and don't forget to subscribe. On that note, I would like to say bye to everyone who joined us here today. Take care, guys, and stay safe.
Thank you.